Hey, can everybody hear me? Okay, great. Okay, we're just testing really quick to make sure that everybody can view the slides via the YouTube broadcast, because the Google Hangout has a limit and is full. Okay, looks like it's working. Great, thanks for confirming. Okay, so we're going to take about an hour today to kind of walk you guys through the Design Impact Group and share out a bit on the internship program that we're running. Thank you for taking the time today to be with us and to hear our pitch, so to speak. Around the table here, you've got Robert Fabricant, who's one of the co-founders of the Design Impact Group, as well as me. I'm Michael Mori. I'm a creative lead here. And we have two of our other creative leads around the table, Melanie Call and Elise Mar. What's the trouble? Okay. So do you guys want to say hi real quick?
Sure. Hi, this is Elise. I actually don't know if the video's not on. Just
the
voice?
video can be on.
We can turn the video on real quick. We'll show you guys who we are.
Awesome. Let's just...
Sorry, I didn't mean to make that more difficult. But anyways, hi, I'm Elise. Really excited to see the next recruits of the interns. We've had some really awesome waves of people come in and out of our firm, and has created some really great added skills and expertise over the course of the past 3 years. That is Robert Fabricant, the big man of the Design Impact Group, the founder. And I'm very, very grateful to have you all on the call. It seems very full right now. Looking forward to hearing from you.
And this is Melanie.
Hi. I came through as a fellow a few years ago as well, and have had the privilege of recruiting many folks for past years, and excited to see what kind of great talent and unique perspectives we have in. I think this is, in some ways, the internship program is almost like a laboratory for our studio and bringing in new talent. So it's always exciting to see who walks through the door.
Yep. Similarly, I came in as an intern as well a couple of years back. We all kind of came from very different backgrounds. The work that we do here, as you'll see in the presentation, is pretty diverse and requires a lot of different skills. I think that a lot of you come from different backgrounds, which is something we're really excited to see and to learn a bit more about. But we're going to jump into the presentation, and we'll try and go through it quickly so that we have time for your questions. So I'm going to turn off the camera and go back to sharing the deck, which you can follow along with. It's brief, but feel free to drop your questions in the comment in the comment bar. As they arise, and we can address those once we're done with the presentation, and any others that you might have. Okay, 1 second. Okay, if anyone's having trouble seeing this deck, please let us know. Okay, so you've got you also have Kristen Schlatt on the line. She's one of our senior designers in Nairobi. So she's the fourth person in the little in the little picture grid here. So what we're going to do today is kind of give you a quick overview of the Design Impact Group, who we are and how we work. We want to tell you a bit about the different projects that we've done and provide some examples to make our work more concrete. And then we want to tell you about sort of like opportunities to work here at DIG and open up the floor for discussion. So let's start with what is DIG? So we're a design practice that is housed within a broader strategy consulting firm called Dahlberg. Together with Dahlberg, we have offices in over 15 countries around the world. You can see on the map on this slide where some of those offices are located, including the 4 DIG design studios. We're speaking to you here from New York. Kristen is in Nairobi. We also have a team in Mumbai and in London. So what we do is we use a specific design methodology, a toolkit called human-centered design. But we also bring in systems thinking and some sort of agile design methodologies involving like lots of co-creation and rapid prototyping and iteration. So I'm assuming that, you know, if you applied for this internship or you're interested, you've probably heard of human-centered design. But you know, we don't want to like rest on that assumption, so we'll discuss that a bit later on in this deck. But I think what's really important to highlight at this point is that we are able to really bring a lot of capacities as a design firm to the table that we wouldn't otherwise be able to do if we were standalone. And that is because, you know, we are able to leverage the broad global footprint of Dahlberg, as well as its content expertise across sectors, whether it's, you know, public health, financial services for the poor, you know, big infrastructure financing projects, etc. So we collaborate quite a bit with the rest of the firm on a project-to-project basis. So again, this is just like this is a little picture of the firm. There's over 350 of us now, not in the design practice, but in the broader Dahlberg family. This picture is a few years old, so I think that it's you know, I think that this is like representative of maybe half of us. We've been growing a lot. I think one of the really amazing things about working with DIG and within Dahlberg is that you know, it's insanely diverse. We hire as many people from the like local people from the countries in which we work as possible. So if you go to our office in Tanzania, you'll find many Tanzanians. If you go to our office in Lagos in Nigeria, you'll find many Nigerians. And what's really special and unique about that is that it brings in so many valuable perspectives from around the world, and the issues that we work on in international development sort of require those perspectives in order to be able to in order to be able to really you know, sort of solve for the challenges that we face. So we've got a 60-40 split between women and men, including at the partner and leadership level, which is really awesome. Similarly, we have 40 nationalities represented and more than 60 languages spoken here at Dahlberg. So it is a truly global and a truly diverse firm. So DIG sits within Dahlberg. There are a number of other entities or organizations, including DGDA, which is the Dahlberg Global Development Associates, and that's really like the biggest piece of the Dahlberg family. That's the strategy consulting firm. But we also have, you know, a firm focused, an organization within focused on capital advisory. So that's a lot of like those big financing projects I was alluding to. But we've also brought on firms who specialize in, you know, quantitative and psychometric surveying, as well as big data analysis, etc. So what's so exciting about working at DIG is that you get to collaborate with these teams on projects. You get to bring these design skills to the table, and then really see how they sort of how they can like have a multiplier like impact effect, you know, when we sort of bring together the different methodologies and tools that we all have. So I might turn it over for a moment to one of my colleagues here to tell you a bit about us, about the design practice and who we are and what it's like to work here. So Elise, you want to say a few words on that?
Yeah, sure. So the design practice in specific.
Yeah.
So this is our wacky team. This was at the most recent retreat where we all get together and talk about how the practice is changing, what kind of skills we're pulling in and leveraging, and essentially this is quite a learning environment where we're being pushed in every project to incorporate different skills, different ways of thinking, different backgrounds. So as you see here, this is everyone from all of our studios in one place. and we did some block printing, which is why you see everyone wearing those scarves, as a way to sort of reconnect with the maker aspect. Because to be honest, even though we are designers here, there's so much about a pretty meta thinking going on about more at the design principle and systems thinking level. So every once in a while, when we get a chance to just do some pure like basic design, like of visuals and block printing, that really relieves a valve for some of us. So what we'd like to talk about here is the range of skills. And so some of us, like you'll see Prerik here on the right-hand side, and myself actually worked together quite a long time ago, really coming from a product and engineering design background, but focusing on low-cost medical devices. You see Pragya and even Tosh and Sue, who are also in this picture, who were master sort of visualizers and communicators through digital design. Everyone here across the board has a basic skill of some wireframing and UX and experience design. And let's see what else we have here.
So we've got me, who's actually taking the picture. So I'm
not
not in the
you're
photo.
not in there.
That's fine.
So,
and then Sebastian on the top left, and the two of us come from more of like an ethnographic and a qualitative research background. Though Sebastian did go to SBA, so he did beef up on his design chops before joining.
And he has actually a product design degree.
Yeah, industrial design.
And then we have Priyanka, who's a technology specialist, and Trevor, who has a long history in like diplomacy and state stuff. My background is in social policy, but have worked in design for education for a long period of time before here. So a lot of people that.
But I think that the important thing to note here is that like our work is super hands-on. And it requires a lot of like energy and commitment. We spend like weeks at a time in like remote communities, in far-flung corners of the world, like working with, the people who we're, designing for. This requires like a lot of like flexibility, a lot of sort of grit, and a lot of humility. So I think that like that's probably the common thread that runs through all of us, even if we do come from different professional backgrounds. So that to me is really what's, sort of most important, when we're looking at growing the team, is that we get people who really bring those qualities in addition to whatever skills that they also bring to the table.
Yeah, it's definitely a yes, why not kind of attitude for most of the things thrown in our direction, and much more of an experimentation culture. So flexible and dynamic in that sense. So yeah.
Okay, so we'll move on. So we also wanted to say a few words about the HCD process. So I'm not sure if everybody's familiar, but I'll just give you a really quick overview. It's, human-centered design, it is a bit what it sounds like. It's really about engaging people and communities sort of where they're at, right? So like you go to the people and the communities whom you're trying to design solutions for, to understand, the world from their eyes, the problem from their perspective, the needs from their perspective. And then you work with them to build, interesting sort of solutions, whether it's a product, service, a program, a policy, etc. The thing about HCD is that it's also like highly iterative. So it's a bit cyclical in nature, which you can see here in this slide. Whatever our learnings sort of inform, the design and the creation of the solutions, which we then, test through rapid prototyping, and learn from those tests and iterate, right? We recreate until we get to a point where we feel like, what we've designed and what we've produced, like can really stand on its own and sort of like deliver value or deliver impact. And then it's really a matter of like figuring out like, okay, how do we scale this? How do we sort of build beyond the basic feature set to unlock more value, to unlock greater impact? Then another piece, of course, because we do work in international development, is measuring the impact of the solutions that we bring to the table. That is sort of something that tends to happen a bit down the road. And there are a lot of different firms that really specialize in kind of impact analysis and impact assessment. And within Dahlberg, we have those capacities as well. Elise, Melanie, is there anything else you want to add about the process?
I think one thing that's kind of unique too is because we work with organizations that have to take these to the next round of implementation, we're often helping building the capacity and design skills of the folks that we're working alongside. So thinking about learning with and from the people we work with, I think is probably a unique aspect of the way we approach problems as well and approach the process.
Great. So what you can see here is just a quick typology of HCD projects and some of the methods that are associated with each of those. I think that, this is really just like a quick overview slide, but we're going to talk through some specific cases, some specific projects that we've done, which I think will make this a lot more concrete. But at a high level, we will do projects that are really focused on, strategic framing. So bringing together a group of stakeholders within sort of an industry or an ecosystem who actually need to be at the table in order to solve the problems that we're dealing with, and helping them sort of, frame the issues, frame the challenges, frame their collaboration, and work towards some solutions. Another type is sort of program design. This is similar in some ways to like service design, but often these programs are. Oops, could somebody mute? Thanks. But oftentimes these programs are, these are programs run by governments or by big NGOs, etc. Finally, we also have sort of these piloting and implementation type projects where, somebody has designed a solution or we have designed a solution, and it's time to actually put it out into the world and see what we learn when we actually make it available on the market. So that's sort of like piloting, right? And there's an implementation element to that, which is how do you actually bring this service or product to people? And then what can you learn from it, and how can that sort of improve it as you move towards broader scale? And then finally, this is something that Kristen can speak to. We include a monitoring and evaluation and sort of a learning agenda in some of our projects. And a lot of those are sort of directly related to that piloting itself. So she'll probably speak to that when we get to the specific projects that we work on. Skip that slide. These are some of our recent clients. So as you can see, a lot of our work spans private and public sector. Oftentimes we will actually have a public sector client, for example, World Bank CGAP, or the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, sort of engaging us on a project where they sort of set us up to work with a private sector organization like a bank like Bank BTPN or Jana Lakshmi in India. And those are always very interesting projects because then that sort of strategic framing element, it comes into play even if the project's main objective is to produce a product or a service. So what does the work look like? These are just a few photos from some of the work that we do in communities. As we've mentioned, we do a lot of qualitative and ethnographic research, but we also do quite a, we are increasingly doing more on the quantitative research side and producing business models for some of the solutions that we're sort of building for the world. A lot of that sort of quantitative research and business modeling is executed in very close collaboration with our colleagues here at Dahlberg. Which is one of the unique capacities that we sort of bring. And I think from an internship perspective, or really from a perspective of working here at DIG, it's just a really interesting opportunity to sort of think in a new way and develop a skill set that I feel like designers don't necessarily often get the chance to do. You can also see some photos here of our user testing and our prototyping processes, as well as the co-creation and product and service design that sort of leads to those products and services. Is there anything else you guys wanted to add before we get on to the specific work examples?
No, I think sometimes it helps to just ground it in those examples quicker.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to Kristen here to kick off, the glimpse of our work.
Cool. Thanks, Michael. Can you guys hear me okay?
Sorry, yes, 1 second. Let me just mute my microphone.
And if you're there. Okay, so if you jump to the next slide, or I can share the deck on my end if that's easier. I'll do
that.
Kristen, I jumped to the next slide for you, so you can just tell me and I'll jump back.
Great. Yeah, so I just want to talk briefly about one of our kind of core projects that we've had keeping us busy the last year and a half in Kenya, based out of our Nairobi office. And this is a project we're calling DigiFarm, which is about designing a bundled digital service that provides access to finance, discounted inputs, learning content, and some other features to smallholder dairy farmers in Kenya. So to give you, I guess, an overview of the project structure, it's been a pretty interesting structure in that we have a coalition of different partners who are all supporting this one effort towards DigiFarm. So our client is an organization called Mercy Corps that has a program called AgroFin Accelerate. And we've been supporting them more broadly has been supporting. There is going to, and it's $24 million worth of funding going towards bridging the gap of access to finance for smallholder farmers. So that program is obviously much larger than this one project. We've had several different projects with them in Kenya, Zambia, Tanzania, and some other places as well over the last year, just to kind of give you some context. But DigiFarm was really kind of looking at a public-private partnership model. So we partnered with, again, Mercy Corps, and then we partnered with Safaricom, which is the biggest telecom in Kenya. And they were looking at what opportunities there are to provide services to smallholder dairy farmers. So our engagement with them was really in 3 different phases. So our first phase was looking at coming up with opportunities within this value chain. So we went out and spent about 2 weeks on the ground and came up with a series of opportunity areas. And at this point, we're reporting to the Safaricom kind of social impact group. So once we discovered, I think, around 7 different opportunity areas for farmers, it included things like financial products, not just a traditional loan, looking at different channels for distribution to farmers, including service layer and like agent models. So those types of opportunities. So we presented them to Safaricom team. And they were really excited about the opportunities that we found. They did some kind of internal prioritization within Safaricom, and then came back to us for a second phase in which we actually went out and designed and prototyped some interventions that would fit within these different opportunity areas. And you'll see there's a little screenshot here of a USSD menu, which is an app, USSD-based app that we designed. That was one of the kind of key features of the product. So we came up with a full set of design specifications for what a digital product could be, as well as a playbook for kind of full mobilization of the service. So that includes how we would actually market to farmers, a kind of go-to-market strategy. It included communications to farmers. It included looking at an agent layer. And so we handed this over to Safaricom in the form of a playbook. And they've been working the last 6 months to actually build and develop this product. And we're meeting back up with them this week because they're actually going to be launching DigiFarm as one of their business products this week. So Sunday we're actually launching, which is really exciting for us. And we're going to be going back for a third phase in which we're going to be helping with monitoring and evaluation to test that activities within DigiFarm are going as planned, what we can improve, and to really assess overall impact over time. So that's pretty much DigiFarm in a nutshell. And I'll turn it back over to Michael to talk about a couple other projects.
Okay, actually, this is Elise. Go ahead, Elise.
Okay. So I'll talk more generally about USAID. We work with USAID in a mechanism that's sort of, they use all these words like that don't always make total sense. So the mechanism is a 3-year engagement where we have allocated amount of funds to create a portfolio of work across global health. And so we have maybe, I don't know, maybe like 4 or 5 different projects now in that portfolio of work. And what you see on this screen right now is one element of the portfolio. And what you see in this framework is how to take an innovation, a new global health innovation to market. And this gets pretty away from design at a very broad framework and outputs, because what you're actually seeing is the question of when does the market and user research come into play in orchestration around manufacturing, distribution, clinical evidence, policy, coordination across, on the ground, like providers, and also creating an uptake strategy. So what's so interesting about this project is that the designers were very much involved with understanding how a product gets to market, but there's so many other pieces of expertise that come into play, because what USAID is trying to do is make markets, right? So if there was a market already for product innovations in global health, they would exist, right? So they have to do work to sway policy, to reduce cost and make agreements with manufacturing and distribution, and that is a whole different ballgame from a basic product designer. I can speak to this a little bit closely because my first like step into designing for emerging markets was to create a low-cost infant warmer, and I thought product sales is going to mean impact. But once you look at sales models and how you actually extend reach and uptake into rural areas, the question gets much, much more complex. And so what it led me to is a place like DIG, where I can see the full picture and then provide deep expertise on 1 or 2 components of this that affect design. So that's looking at, for example, a key piece would be, we're not going to design a product and then only put it in front of people once it's already manufactured, costed, agreements are made. And now we just got to make these women use the product, right? We got to get that stuff all the way at the very beginning to say it's user driven. And so how do we elevate that discussion to this larger consortium of people to say, these are some insights, this is how people think about this aspect of global health that we're tackling, and then feed that into the process and drive the process for product development, along with all these other orchestration of needs to create a market for these global health innovations. And so as you see at the bottom, there's a link there for the Ebola Grand Challenge. Another part of this mechanism, in addition to this broader framework, is how do we help innovators from around the world who are addressing a specific problem for a grand challenge get to market. And so we did one in the Ebola Grand Challenge. Right now we're working on the Zika and Future Threats Grand Challenge. And we've also sort of advised in the Maternal and Infant Health Grand Challenge as well. So that's, allocating something in the ballpark of $500,000 to each innovator and saying, how do we get that product to market?
Can you maybe just quickly describe a couple of the innovators that we're supporting and like the solutions they're trying to bring to market?
Do we have other slides on that, or is this just we'll just talk about it?
We don't have other slides on it, but if you do follow that link, you can see a microsite that we maintain that sort of gives a lot more context on the specific innovators.
Yeah, Mel, you can go ahead.
So one example would be we helped, so we didn't use human-centered design to find the solution, but we used it to refine it. So we took protective suits that healthcare workers wear in the field when they are when they're both searching for health cases and serving people who
have Ebola,
frankly. We wanted to test and refine the features that were being tried in this new suit and prioritize the investments were made to be made in the refinement. So that was more of a user testing project that was very product focused. And
so what did you actually do?
So we took suits into into the field. We looked at people's existing protocols. So what were the materials and instructions that they currently followed? And then we compared it and tried to simplify both the features and the protocols used on a new suit in healthcare settings.
So basically what they did, because I wasn't on this project, but I did see some photos, they took these Ebola suits to sort of remote parts of Nigeria, where else?
Sierra Leone.
And ran workshops with Ebola first responders.
Yeah.
Let them basically put on the suits and just stress test the hell out of them.
Yeah.
And those first responders kind of told us, you know, here's what works, here's what doesn't.
Yeah.
Try improving this. You know, try improving that, because they really are the experts.
And then they would prototype some of the challenges that we had with the suits. They actually would prototype new features right then and there. So new hoods, new sleeves, etc. And so it was kind of an empowering moment for them.
Now going back to this slide that's anchoring there is, yes, we did have the features and redesigned from a very product experience, but what that actually informed in the hands of USAID was to get in front of policy and advocacy to create a list of criteria, which then could become a standardization for emergency response. And in addition to that, we are trying to persuade a manufacturer to take this suit on and be able to have it available in market. And so in addition to just that human-centered design lens of refining a product, there's added pieces with Dahlberg's consultant side around policy and advocacy, as well as manufacturing and distribution, and making it an enticing market for manufacturers to go after.
Cool. So in the interest of time, I'm going to sort of speed through the last example, and then we'll talk very quickly about opportunities to work with us and open up the floor to questions. So the last project, so I find this to be a really good example of how we sort of take user research, develop a set of insights, and then plug those insights into a design process. So this was a project that we did with Mercy Corps in Zambia, working with smallholding farmers. Basically what we were trying to do was figure out, how do you improve the yields and the productivity of smallholding farmers in Zambia, and how do you link them to markets for their goods? So it's a pretty big question that involves a lot of different considerations and a lot of variables. But really, to start, what we did was we went to the farmers themselves in Zambia, and we talked to them about, their experience. Walk us through your typical season. What do you do? What, needs do you have along the season? What challenges do you face in sort of like meeting those needs, in planting and fertilizing your crops, in harvesting your crops, in selling your crops, etc. And we mapped out sort of their farming cycle, paying close attention to the specific farming related activities that they did throughout the year, as well as the ways in which they financed those activities. And we mapped it out along this timeline here, which we then basically shared out with a group of companies who provide services to farmers. Those companies include banks and lenders who provide loans, because farming is very cash intensive, and you have a lot of upfront costs, and it takes a while to get the harvest and to get paid and to cover those costs. So loans are really important. We talk to insurers. We talk to seed and fertilizer providers, and we talk to agricultural experts who sort of do training, as well as companies that actually buy up the produce. So what came of this? Well, what we did was we took these sort of insights, and we took this map of sort of like farmer needs, and we designed a digital toolkit, basically a platform that sort of sits across 3 levels of stakeholders. It's accessible to farmers, it's accessible to sort of the like middlemen and like local companies that aggregate produce, that buy up produce directly from the farmers and then sell it to like big national level and international level buyers. And we made it available as well to the international level buyers. And what this platform does is it sort of provides transparency across the value chain into sort of farmer needs, farmer sort of processes, and sort of the produce and the pricing. So like how much, like what, like yield actually going to look like this year, and what are the prices on offer. So that transparency sort of like helps farmers get a better price. It helps buyers estimate like what their harvest, what the market is actually going to look like, so that they can figure out what they need to buy and how much they can realistically offer. This platform also provides a range of training and capacity building services for farmers, so that they can actually get better yields from their land by basically use methods. And it provides financing for improved seeds and improved and weeding chemicals, as well as financing for like school fees and other very real needs that often undermine a farmer's ability to make investments in their actual farming practices. So this platform hasn't yet been launched and is very much in the design stage, but I think that this is a nice sort of example of how we sort of go from this user research and insights into like actual design. Okay, so we're going to, we've only got 20 minutes left, but we do want to leave some time for questions. So really quickly, we'll go to the very last section, which is current opportunities and processes at DIG, which I will turn over to Kristen to lead, and then we'll take your questions. So we'll try and reserve 10-15 minutes at the end for questions.
Questions being asked in the live chat and answered there. So if you want to look there to see if your question's been answered, that's also a good place to find resources.
And that's in YouTube. So for all of you who are in the Hangout right now, I've just dropped the YouTube link in the chat window, so you can take a look over there at the questions and answers that we've been kind of fielding throughout the presentation. Kristen, I'm turning it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Michael. Okay, hi again, guys. I realized I didn't get to introduce myself because I was frantically emailing people with YouTube links, but I'm the one who's been sort of managing the internship recruitment process so far. I'm not an operations person per se. My background is more digital product design. So apologies, I'm so sorry about the technical hiccups we are experiencing today. But I do want to take a few minutes to talk about the opportunities that we're currently filling with DIG. So we have two types of opportunities, and hopefully you've seen them on our website. So that's where we have the listing of all job descriptions that we're trying to fill. So we have both full-time opportunities. Those are going to be out of our Mumbai, London, and Nairobi offices. No full-time positions in New York at the moment. And then we have the DIG internships, which are going to be across all of our offices. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I got a few questions about needing to distinguish the different types of internships and what they look like across the different offices. So I'll start with just the research and design internships. The reason that they're both called research and design internships is because they're meant to be a more general job description. I think we went through when we were looking at the team picture earlier, you saw that the people on our team fall into a lot of different buckets. We have people who are more focused on design, people who are more on the strategy end of the spectrum, people who have background in policy and technology. So it's really hard to write a specific job description, especially for an internship role. So with that said, I think there's a little bit of difference between the research and design interns we're looking for in New York, London, and Mumbai. And that's going to be a more general, I think, skill set. So we're looking for people who have visual design backgrounds, looking for people who have research backgrounds, people who are experienced in design and strategy as well. And the way we kind of structure our recruitment process is we kind of take into account not just your experience in terms of skill set, but we also look at your background in various sectors, your kind of approach to your work, your personality. So there's many different factors that kind of make up a day type person, just in the office with everyone in New York. The Nairobi description is going to be a little bit more focused on research. It's going to be more research intensive because of the nature of the project work we do in Nairobi. It tends to be more traveling to users on site, doing more research trips. So we're looking someone with a little bit more experience in the research focus who can help with logistics and planning, but can also help leading interview, and then that same kind of breadth of different skills across design, strategy, and others. So those are kind of the general research. Yeah.
Can I chime in real quick? I just wanted to say that, while we aren't actively hiring for full-time positions in New York, we are open to hiring, especially if we have interns in New York, who turn out to be a really good fit for the team, and sort of for the needs that we have. So we're not we're very much not closing off that possibility, that avenue. And in fact, that's how I got here. That's how Melanie got here. That's how Trevor got here. So, don't, yeah, exactly. So don't be discouraged.
Yeah.
But, priority very much is to build out our studios in Nairobi and Mumbai, which are much closer to the users with whom we typically research.
Yeah. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, so I'll just talk quickly about our other two internships. So we have these two that look a lot more specific because they are. So we have UX design and public health, and industrial design and public health. And I don't know if Elise, if you're still there, if you want to speak more to these.
Yeah, sure, I can do that.
Yeah.
Sure. So very specifically, we have a couple projects within that USAID portfolio, and some of them have gotten pretty specific in a product design way, thinking about much more towards as you get to commercialization and you have a design that's decided and not just an opportunity area or concepts. We would love to have that design execution, industrial design expertise, with the focus in medical devices, and then in general, these innovators in the Grand Challenge do have to push out something live to market, and one of those are a digital product, and it has a strong component of UX design and testing and research for interfaces. So anyone who has that kinds of experience, it will be, again, another product in public health, and would probably require both traveling in front of potential users globally, and maybe some also remote testing as well.
Cool. Back to you, Chris.
Cool. Thanks, Elise. Yeah. So yeah, those are a little bit, I guess, kind of the specifics of each of the internships in terms of the description. I'll talk a little bit about kind of the general things we're looking for across all of them. So I've been getting a lot of questions about, do I have to be graduate level to get this internship? And the answer is no. But we say graduate level just because we're looking for someone with a couple years of experience at least. We're generally wanting someone who's had in the workforce, who's actually worked as a designer or worked as a strategist, or someone who's at a graduate level. So no, you don't have to be, but the more experience you have, that's gonna kind of help prioritize you. The start dates, they're variable. So kind of speaking to the different internship roles, the general roles, we're pretty flexible with the start date for those, and so we'll work with you. So we really try to prioritize strong candidates. We won't eliminate you if you have limitations on when you can start. We'll try to make other things. Other things are probably all of the internships are going to require travel. They're often going to experience a variety of different projects. So Elise mentioned traveling globally to be put in front of users to test some of these products. That's one type of project. It might be working out of the studio office for a while, doing something that's more client-facing, developing materials for a workshop, things like that. So it's a variety of projects, but typically you will be asked to join us on some travel at some point. And I think, I guess, really specific questions. Let me just peer through the questions here.
So while you do that, just one thing to add is that on the experience issue, we're definitely open to, people who are not graduate level. I think that the key is really having some experience working in sort of the social impact sector, preferably international. But we don't have like hard and fast rules on this. So like I would not let, the shape of your experience sort of dissuade you from applying. It's really just important that you have some experience, some mix of experience. It could be in strategy, it could be in consulting, it could be in design, it could be in in the international development space. I think that like for some of the more specific like visual design needs that we have, like that would sort of require, people that have visual design skills. A lot of those can be got, through school and through, like school related projects and such. So, it's not that you have to have like necessarily professional experience doing that type of visual design, but you would need those skills for those particular internships.
Sorry. Yeah, just to build on that, we also had some questions which are like, what is the intern role within the DIG team, and like how am I going to be treated as an intern? I think that speaks to that. So we rely a lot on our interns. I think intern is actually not the best term for what these people do. I was an intern. I was a intern when I first started, but we do have really high expectations for the quality of work that interns do, and we have high expectations in terms of being able to interface with clients, interface with users. Help us, with presentations, help us doing communications and outreach. So we do expect people that have a certain level of like professional polish as well, because we do give interns a lot of responsibility. And as Michael said, that's been a shoe-in for a lot of people to actually join the team. So yeah, I think. So I'll switch over to full-time opportunities. I've seen some chat going on in the YouTube chat, so I think some of those questions have already been answered. But in short, we're hiring for full-time positions, both entry-level and lead positions, at our London, I think not New York, at our London, Mumbai, and Nairobi offices. As Michael mentioned, we're trying to build out those offices more, especially I think Mumbai at this time. If you have applied for those positions, and if you are interested in following up, asking more specific questions, we haven't been terribly active with our search up until this point, but I think the best thing to do would be to reach out to the studio leads. So I've listed names here, Pragya Mishra, myself, for Nairobi, and then and New York, Michael, address schlatt@dahlberg.com. You all have my email, so you can kind of duplicate the formula to reach out to other people. And I think with that, yes, Michael.
You kind of cut out there. So the email formula, we should have included this in the slide, but it would be like michael.mori@dahlberg.com. So you do have Kristen's email, so just that same.
Yeah, and if you have any questions, you can just refer them to me, and I can try to forward you to the right people.
And Kristen, so one thing to add, a question that we often get asked, especially for those who aren't formal designers, but maybe have worked in a strategy capacity or have worked directly on programs or other projects in the past, is how the heck do I prepare a portfolio for this? What do you guys mean by portfolio? Because it's a little bit different than just your normal resume submission. So one thing, don't be afraid is probably my first advice. And the next advice is look at your experience in your resume and look to see what the discrete projects are. So one thing where resumes fall short is that they just list these higher level, these are the things I did or the responsibilities I had, which are helpful for us to know your skill set. But we want to know how you think and how you solve problems, the way in which you go about doing that. So if you can highlight a few distinct projects that you worked on, what the problem was, how you solved it, how you attacked it, right? Many times you're not solving anything.
Yeah, sometimes you fail. You try and you fail, which is totally fine.
Right. So the process that you took, maybe some of the methods that you might have used, and the role that you played specifically. So you had, and if you weren't the graphic designer, please let us know so that we don't assume that was your skill set, even though if you're using visuals from your graphic designer on the team, and help us really understand how you fit in on these projects and how you think about problems. And so putting together a simple visual deck that gives us an insight into what that is, what a few problems or projects that you're proud of and problems that you've had the privilege of noodling on, that would be helpful. So don't be afraid. It's definitely helpful to pass that on to another person, maybe another designer, to look at it to see if it kind of fits what people are used to. But yeah, don't be afraid, but definitely show us how you solve problems. Don't just tell us.
Yeah, and I've had a lot of questions about that. I think one other point is it's a visual tool, but it doesn't have to be like a visually masterful or like visually beautiful portfolio. So we're not looking for like a graphic design skill set per se.
Yeah, I often we'd rather see something scrappy but thoughtful than nothing at all, or just a lot of words. So if you take any screenshots of some of the pictures or deliverables that might be associated with us and help us see it in a problem base, it's very helpful for us. So
yeah, I think that the visual element is really important because a lot of the work that we do has a pretty strong storytelling component.
Yep.
And whether that's you're putting together an infographic and you're using Illustrator, or you do photography and you have an eye for an eye for it, an eye for visual presentation. That's kind of what we want to see, and we want to see that integrated into your ability to tell a story about yourself, because you're going to have to tell stories about other people
and the
communities
you serve and the problems you solve. Yeah. Great. I just wanted to pop in there because I know it's one of the main questions that we get from people, and we want to make sure we're definitely a place for you to still be growing. So even though we do expect people who can dive into the projects that they're working on, we do know that some of you guys are coming to this maybe with less experience or one part of your toolkit that's still filling out. So we welcome that.
Yeah, and we're able to stay on a bit longer than 1 o'clock if you all have more questions. So please don't hesitate. You can either drop in questions in this Hangout group chat or on the YouTube channel, which we're also monitoring. We're gonna look at that.
Yep.
Let's see. And yeah. So we have a few other, okay, so some of our younger applicants have also asked some questions about, how do I play in a field where we might have professionals and grads applying too? Definitely showcase projects that you've worked on. Do highlight if it's a student or speculative project, but you can feel free to put student work in there, as well as significant volunteer or student I know that college campuses these days, student activities are like startups and real jobs and real meaningful projects. Show us that. And if you can show us the problems that you've worked on, that's helpful as well as any work that you're able to share from internships. And then a lot of people also asked about how teams are staffed. We, at the beginning of all of the internship experiences, definitely sit down and do one-on-ones as well as some surveys to understand what you're hoping to get out of the project and where that meets our studio needs at the time. And we try to staff as well as we can to those goals, trying to make sure that you at least have one primary project and then maybe a secondary project or two. But we want to at least help you see at least one piece of a project to completion. So even if you can't see a whole project, can you see a phase or can you see a specific moment in time, so you get a sense of meaning out of the role you're playing at that time. But we are a consultancy, so projects don't always have anticipated. We can't always anticipate when projects start and stop, so we do our best. And then those project teams are often not always based out of one office. So we've had people who have been based out of New York, but have been significantly cross-staffed with a Nairobi team. And so we do say that you have a home studio, and that's where you'll be on those listservs. You'll go out to lunch with those people. You'll hopefully rest your head there most when you're in town. But we do staff people, and they may virtually collaborate with those teams, or physically collaborate with those teams in communities?
So last year I was on 3 projects. Like the first project was with the African Development Bank, and I was cross-staffed with, you know, a DIG colleague from London, and then like broader Dahlberg colleagues from 4 or 5 different offices in Africa. I was on a project with the Gates Foundation doing research in Kenya and India, and on that project I was cross-staffed with, you know, colleagues in Mumbai and Delhi. Later I was on a project in Zambia, which I talked a bit about, and that was cross-staffed with, you know, the Nairobi team as well. So it's almost all cross-staffing all the time, which is really great.
Super cool. It's very international, not just like diversity feather in your cap.
Exactly.
International.
And the other thing is, like, you know, we've got a lot of questions about like time on the ground or in the field or in communities, etc. You know, I would say that like on any, say you have a 3-month project, probably on average 3 to 4 weeks of that project are in the community, like doing user research and testing. So it's roughly 1/4 to 1/3 of the time you are actually like traveling and researching. So it is pretty demanding in that sense.
And then you come back and you do like what's behind us right now, which is synthesis for a HIV prevention product delivery that we're working on in Uganda and South Africa. So you come back to your home studio and you either virtually collaborate or co-locate to do your analysis. And another thing to add there is that can be really strenuous, right? Like you're 100% on the ground with working with people and in communities. We do try to, and also deliverably. We're not going to lie that is a strenuous time, but we do try to make sure that people can find balance in the pockets that they can. So we try to be really open about that. And we also complement our client-facing work with more internal projects. So those of you who have had experiences helping studios or organizations do other things, you know, marketing, storytelling, training programs, etc. Those are interesting skills for us too, operations, because part of the fellowship program in the summer is also finding some sort of internal project that you can help build capacity on. And we're curious about how you can help us build the studio during your time here. So that's kind of a unique opportunity. I think Kristen, especially myself, even in my time, like some of those internal projects are really like they're meaningful. That's how this actual program started, right? Was started during a fellowship year. So it's cool.
Yeah. We've been getting, so we've also been getting some questions on do I have to be a designer, or what if I don't have kind of a hard design skill set or a design background to apply to apply for this position? And just a short answer to that is no, of course you don't have to be a designer. So you saw in our existing team makeup, we have people who are strategists, people who have very different backgrounds. We do have a number of people who have hard design skill sets, but I would say in order, we had some questions about like, how do I, ramp up my design skill set in order to, if I have a developer, how do I ramp up my skill set in order to contribute to these projects? And I would say that's kind of one reason that we offer these internships every year, is to kind of bridge the gap for people who come from a certain background and are looking to transition into design, for example. So I think it's a really good way to learn some of those skills is to come and learn on the fly. As Michael said, I think one of the most common types of design work we do a lot of product design, yes, but I think the most consistent type of design work we do across any project is really communication. You could call it communication design or whatever, but it's really about being able to take our research insights, or being able to take deliverables or recommendations and package it in a way that's really kind of resonates with people, resonates with clients, and resonates with a very diverse kind of coalition of stakeholders. So I would say that if you're looking to kind of brush up on a design skill set, being able to do communications and visual communication, especially being able to create a diagram, create a systems diagram, those are probably the most useful in terms of dig work. And research skill set.
Good writers too.
Yeah.
And good writers.
Yeah.
Visualize and be able to write clearly.
So we have a question. How would you compare an internship experience with DIG versus with DGDA? Elise, do you want to take that?
Sure. It's extremely different. So I would say DGDA is really often recruiting from business school, and that is highly analytical and much more tops-down driven approach. So that's looking at expert interviews from key opinion leaders, potentially people within government, ministries of health, like really pretty high-level stakeholders.
Analysis of data
sets. And then taking data sets and creating a strategy and analyzing value chains to figure out where barriers and challenges are. And then advising on, from that, creating where and how you could create. Sometimes it gets down to program level specific recommendations, and that's where kind of like the integration meets, right? It's at that program level, but we're actually a much different process going from the bottoms up, going to the people it would benefit, understanding their unmet needs, understanding the resources of the people or the organizations who would be providing those services, and then developing programs, and then sort of laddering up to strategic implications and how it fits with a lot of those top-down approaches.
Yeah, so they do a hypothesis-led approach where they're like, okay, there's a problem, or a question. This is what we think the answer is. Let's go and try and prove it or test it. And of course, they're open to being wrong, and they change their answer based on what they learned through their analysis. Whereas we are like, okay, there is, the client is posing us this problem or this question. Is this even the right problem or the right question? Given the challenge that they're trying to address. And the way we sort of get at that is by like actually going and talking to like the people in the communities who are sort of like the subject of that challenge, right? So to make it concrete, if it's like about, for example, some of the work that Melanie's doing, or if it's about like, how do you increase like young people's usage of contraceptives and, HIV prevention, the question, of course, like for us wouldn't be like, okay, the approach would not be for us like, okay, well, you do this, you do that, you do this. Now let's go and see like, does that actually make sense? What we would do is we would go and we would actually speak to young women and young men about like their current sort of beliefs and opinions and perspectives and needs related to contraception and the HIV prophylaxis. And then from there, we would sort of work with them to figure out, okay, how can we make this easier for you? How can we increase your usage of these things, right?
And on a very tactical level, the way that translates into an internship is that you tend to be on one problem or project in DGA throughout the summer, and it's pretty scoped and defined and mostly based in the office that you're you've selected. And then there is a structured training program, which is really, Dahlberg does a great job in investing in its people. So you have a structured training program associated with that. We've tried to align and offer the training program to DIG folks as they see fit. But I think our interns have a little bit more of there's a little bit less certainty, which is important to know. Like, so if you want more of a straightforward problem that you're going to solve and kind of know how that summer is going to look, that's more that experience. There's a little bit less support or institutionalization because we're a much smaller practice, but we try to share some of the resources.
Yes.
So our New York team, for example, most people started in New York this year, and they did a kickoff and drinks with the summers, the DGDA summers, which was really great. And then the DIG summers and DGDA summers also worked with a group from the interns from UNICEF and did a happy hour and a presentation. So we've tried to create some options where those there's opportunity to really share. Elise did a training hour too for a DGA interns on human-centered design. So we're trying to merge some things, but the kind of predictability and and flexibility of the two roles is different.
Yeah, very different. Very different.
Just practical.
Okay, well, if we have any last questions, please.
To follow up on
otherwise, we're probably going to wrap this up, and we look forward to, we hope you all apply, and we look forward to reviewing your applications. I know a lot of you already have, and you've already started that process of review. Kristen kind of shared the timeline earlier. So you can, if you have applied, you can expect to start hearing from us sometime, in the next month. And again, like the start dates and all that type of stuff is quite flexible on our end. And we know that, particularly as students, that should be helpful in terms of getting, getting the right people, like working within your schedules as well.
Yeah, but do let us know if you're in a decision-making point.
Yes.
And if you've already had an interview with us, or you haven't heard from us, or you've heard a yes, but you're still scheduling, do let us know so that we can be sensitive. We don't want to lose a great applicant. So we want to keep that open. We can be somewhat flexible, but not extremely flexible in our timeline. So please.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Just one more point on that is I would just highly encourage you to apply, even if you're on the fence. If this seems unclear and you're not sure if your skill set is the right lives and that we're keeping it's question of things we're looking for. So I would just please encourage all of you to take a shot.
Cool. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. We really appreciate
So with that,
we really appreciate your time. We will hopefully be in touch with some of you soon. We're also doing another hangout on Monday. I don't really see why you would want to do two of these since they're going to be the same thing. But if you have any friends or colleagues within your program who you think might be interested, please let them know and have them reach out to us. And
it'll be a party.
Send the invite. Okay.
With no technical glitches.
The first one's always a little rougher, so thanks for being intrepid.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks guys.
All right, see y'all. Bye-bye.
Bye.